Hi, my name is Chrissy, and this is my first video. I'm very new, so bear with me. I'll get better. Anyway, I'm entering into the wonderful world of YouTube as a participant and not just, watching anymore because all of a sudden I just felt this need in the past like 2 hours um, to share with the world my story, I guess. You hear about how stories can affect other people, change their lives, inspire. So that's what I'm hoping. Maybe someone out there will get something good out of my story. Not just my story, my husband and I. Recently, we took on a new role. My husband is in ministry full time. He's a pastor, has been for 8 years. Started out in youth ministry, moved into music, leading worship as a worship pastor, and technology and anything to do with that. And let's see, where does this begin? September of 2013. My husband let me know that while on a recent mission trip, so he had just come back from this mission trip, and he said, I had this moment on my trip with the kids there, and it was great. Everybody was doing great, and we even had some kids come to Christ. And one of them came to him and said, wow, I wish we had this type of church back home in our town. And he said it hit him really hard because he realized that we don't have that. We don't have that in our church that we were in, and we don't have it in the town. And what that service was that hit them so hard was a updated music, 20-something relatable type service, um, you know, everything in regards to reaching that age group. Teens, young 20-something, us, you know. And we don't have that. We have older churches, older people in the church, no one interested in listening to young people and their opinions. And so basically, back to this story. My husband comes home from this trip, and a month or so later, he says, I feel this need that I am responsible. I'm responsible for reaching that group. I'm responsible for providing that connection to God. And if we don't have it here already, then I need to do something. And that's the type of person my husband is. He thinks, he asks God for help, and then he does it. He doesn't think twice, he does it. And I'm proud of him for that. That's hard. So anyway, I'm on the phone with him, and he's telling me this. And I say, okay, that's great. How are we going to do that? And he says, I don't know, but I feel like something's happening. So over the next few days, even 2 to 3 weeks, we're praying, and I just start feeling this weird feeling in the air, like something is happening. When we would pray and we would watch sermons and read, and something just came over us. It made us really excited, and we didn't know why. And so then we hit to about, I think it was the middle of October, and he calls me frantically. I'm at home, and he says, I'm watching this video of this pastor speaking. It's Mark Driscoll. And he says, I had to stop the video to call you right now and tell you that I am a troublemaker. And I realize that now. And I cause trouble in the church. And as soon as Mark Driscoll said that, if you're a troublemaker, you constantly are looking for things to change and make changes in the church, this is a sign that you're ready to be a church planner. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, okay, I kind of know where this is going. We're going to start thinking about planning a church. And he knows I don't want to at this point. I've told him a long time, I'm not ready for that. That's giving up your salary, giving up your security, giving up insurance, all those things that you need for a family, especially little kids, and, money, obviously, paying the bills. So as he's telling me this, I can just tell in his voice that, this is not just Bob thinking about a crazy plan or being bored and finding something new to do. There's something different. And so he says, like, I'm watching this video and it just hits me. It's so hard. I'm speechless. I have to stop the video and call you because I know that he's talking about me. I'm like, all right, what do we do with this? And he says, well, I already did something. I stopped the video. I guess I did something before I talked to you. Anyway, I stopped the video. I made a connection. I asked someone in the community if I could use their building for a church. And at this point, I'm starting to get nervous because he's really going after it. So he says, I called this guy who I know has a school building that's open and they're about to be using it, but right now it's empty. And I'm talking to him and I say, so Bob is saying, we'd like to use your building for our church. We're thinking about opening a church up and we need a building. And the guy on the other line says, well, you won't believe this, but I am looking for a church. And of course, I would let you use my building. Now, maybe that doesn't sound crazy to you, but if you're in ministry or understand how ministry works, that is such a huge feat because when you're starting a ministry or a church, the building is one of the hardest things to accomplish because you basically have no funds, no money to support you. So to find a building, you need to be very cheap. And here we are, 2 minutes into a conversation. Bob has found a building and it's free, monthly, free for us. So I'm taken back like, whoa, from one thing to the next, it's just moving so quickly and I get scared and I'm like, slow down. So then I say, okay, that's great. What does that mean? I don't know. I just don't know what to do with that. So he says, well, I'm just going to take some time. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to talk to friends. Maybe I'll talk to Matt, which is our best friend, his best friend here. And it's like, okay. And I think I found comfort in that because Matt is not creative. He's kind of like a type A personality, structured, planned, definitely planned, So he would never jump on board with this, starting a church in the middle of no plans, just to go for it. So he starts praying and he told me that he was going to pray for God to show him something that would make him realize this is right. This is what we should be doing. So then he goes to Matt and he tells Matt about it and says, we need to plant a church. And Matt says, nah, that won't work. And I think it was like a day later, Matt came back and said, I'm on board. This is right. This is what we need. And Bob showed him all of what he thought would be the plans and how it would work. And it was like the Holy Spirit just came through him and inspired him and showed him that it may take some big steps, scary steps, to jump into this, but that it was right. It was what was needed in our area and that we need to do it. And we were Bob and I were shocked because Matt doesn't do anything like that. Matt is a list maker. He's how are we going to get from here to there, every detailed step in line. And Matt's on board with this. So things just started moving from there. We decided that Bob needed to talk with someone. So he found a mentor, another pastor, and kind of revealed this outside of our community because at the time we were in a church and things were very hard at our church. We didn't have like I said, we didn't have what we needed for our community of young people. We have a lot of young kids, 16 to 25, I'd say they're involved in drugs. A big heroin problem in our area. We've had over 75 overdoses in the past 6 months, and we've even had counselors and professionals come into the area and say that our kids don't have anything to do, so they get involved in drugs. So that's a big part of this, is that we need something for our community. And we have, I'd say, about 10 churches in our area that are all older members, of the church. And they're just, nothing against them, they're not reaching this part of the community. So anyway, so Bob was working at one of those churches, and he was providing music. And at the time, they thought they were going in the right direction, but it kind of stopped. Instead of allowing him to pursue these type of things, they said no. They didn't want change. They stopped. So anyway, so Bob is feeling this push to pursue church planting and opening a church and starting a church all on his own. And so now he has a building for free. He has his best friend, who no one thought would support us, on board and ready to leave our church that we were all in, and he's been in the church for 20 years. His family is ingrained in the church. So that says a lot about someone who's ready to leave, and they know there are problems, and their value of the community and those hurting is more important than his history there. I think that says a lot. And anybody that knows Matt would know that says a lot. So, okay, so Matt's on board. We have this building. So Bob's speaking with mentors in his life and saying, this is my situation. The church doesn't want to pursue what I feel is important, what my peers, I guess you would say, other people in the church that believe this is important, but the staff of the church, the elders, the ones who run and make the decisions, they don't see it. But the kids are saying this is what we need. So he's telling these mentors, and they're saying, after prayer and their own personal time with God, that they believe this is right as well. So we're having confirmation after confirmation that this is right. So then I think it was about less than a month. It was definitely less than a month from the time we had this first phone call and discussed this crazy idea. Bob comes to me and he says, I feel, as well as the other people I'm coming to for advice, that it would be very important that we get out of the dark. And what he means by out of the dark is that we shouldn't be hiding anything from our church and the pastors there. And when he said that, I thought, no, I'm not ready for this. I kept saying to him, as long as we have a plan financially to get us through, that's when I'll be ready. Because it's just so much to give up finances. And I know that's indignant of my faith. I understand that. But I've already been through hard times financially in my family, and I don't want to do it again. Who does? So it went from, in 2 or 3 months, we're going to tell the church, to 2 or 3 days. We're going to reveal what we're doing. So those couple days passed, and I don't really know what to do other than just say, if this is what my husband's doing, Lord, let me know that it's right. And he did, because I'm a worrier. I pick things apart. I expect, the big signs. And at this time, I remember thinking back now. I remember I was listening to a pastor speak, and he said that when you have a good plan, it's right, not only from God confirming that to you, but also your wife is on board. And I thought, well, I I don't feel like I'm against it. I feel like I'm for it. We're unhappy with what we're doing. We're not accomplishing anything in ministry, and that's what we're here for. So I don't know how. I just didn't even think about the fear involved, and I just said, okay, I'm going to try and let you handle this. So I said, all right, Bob, go for it. So he went to church. He sat down with the pastor. He said, we're obviously not working well together. We're on different paths for ministry. And he said, this is what I want to do. I want to start a church. I want to leave it this time, which would be like 2 months later, because he wanted to leave with everything taken care of that he had his hands in. He didn't want to just drop everything. And there were things he was involved in that if he would have left immediately, it could have been hard on them. So we were trying to do it the right way. We were trying to go to them as soon as possible, give them the information, not plan or seek out people without them knowing. And we were trying to make sure that everything that he was involved in or that he was responsible for was taken care of. And he even offered to find someone else to do music so that they weren't struggling with music. So we plan it that he would go in. I think it was like a Thursday in October, the end of October. And he sits down and he's having this conversation. And the pastor says, okay, I appreciate your heart. I'm going to take some time to think about it and pray about it. And then we'll meet again and we'll discuss this with the elders. And Bob says, okay. He says, he came back to me and he says, well, it wasn't what I expected, but it wasn't terrible. It was kind of in the middle. I was like, okay. So then they talk again and he says, I would like for you to come to the elders meeting on Sunday night and we'll discuss how you leave. So then we are Sunday night. Bob and I are at Matt's house with his wife, Crystal, who's a good friend of mine, and we're all kind of going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? So they leave, and Bob goes to the meeting, and he's fired immediately. He's told to gather his things from his office. This is a church. So he's fired immediately. He's left with a letter saying that he was dismantling the church, taking people secretly, and that he had been hiding this information, planning behind their back. And it's an uproar, I don't think there was many people in the meeting besides Matt, Bob, maybe 2 elders, and pastor. And he's shocked because he was planning obviously 2 months, not only for them, but for us. We needed that. And so he returns to us at the house, Matt's house, and he tells me, and my stomach just dropped. And I knew everything was going to change big time. I've been through things in churches before that this doesn't surprise me, but of course I didn't want it to happen this way. No, I guess I was surprised that was the reaction, that it was so hurtful, that people and then you can be totally surprised how they react. Now, I understand if anybody watches this, they're going to say, well, you did start a church while you were in a church. Yes and no. We had one person, Matt, and myself, and then we had one person outside of our community that Bob was mentoring with. And they, there wasn't much more that they could do. This was, 2-3 weeks at the most. And this was not, we didn't go any further with this building. He made one phone call. We didn't gather people together. And we didn't do anything. That was it. We talked with these few people, and then Bob went and told them and said, this is what God's laid on my heart, and I want to move forward. That was it. So we're not like pulling people out of the church. So I remember Bob and I left the house. We packed up our kids. We got in the car. And even before I shut the door of the car, I could feel God calling me, saying, be strong for your husband. Be strong for your husband. Get home and be strong for your husband. So I get in the car, I strap the seatbelt, and I look over and he's crying. And he says, what have I done? What have I done to my family? And I felt sympathy for him. I felt pain for him. And I was like, so this is why you're preparing me. You're preparing me, God, for my husband. And I was thankful for that because I'm the one that panics. I'm the one that freaks out, not Bob. Bob is so strong, so calm. He can handle so much. And here he was. Anybody that knows him, they don't know him for this sensitivity that he was showing right then. He was hurt very bad. And not just shocked that he's losing money, but that we felt kind of, misled, just not prepared. Someone we thought we knew very well, we were seeing a completely different side of them and some unusual things that we didn't expect to see from our pastor at the time. Whew. So, I don't remember those few days after that. I remember this blur of a feeling that it wasn't like happiness anymore. It wasn't the excitement. It was this drag yourself out of bed, make it through the day, make sure you tend to every need, and just get through. And I remember talking to Matt and Crystal after this, and they kind of said, that's how we feel too. It's very depressing, and it shouldn't be. We're about to do something fun and exciting that God's going to lead us through, but we're so scared. And there was probably 2 or 3 weeks there, but I remember talking to Crystal and saying, the hardest part for me is not knowing what's next, not knowing when this feeling's going to end, not knowing when it's going to get better. And of course, I guess that's life, but when you lose a job, you just start looking for another job. When you not only are you let go, he's fired, from a church, normally I guess you would start looking at other churches, but here we are. We know what we're going to do. We're going to start a church. And, we had that spot of a few days, week or two, that we were really depressed, but Bob kept moving forward. He kept looking for details. He found a few people that he could trust, and we made the point from the beginning, and people won't believe it, and they'll take the way they want to, but we didn't seek anyone out. We have people to confirm that were with us through every step of the way, and we didn't seek anyone out. We had people obviously come to us and say what's happened, and we told them, and we said we're leaving to start a church that Vermilion needs and that our city needs, and that's it. And I remember we have a few friends that they told us later that they were offended because they thought we were saying we're leaving and we're not bringing you because we're not asking you. So that to me tells me we did it right as much as we could. We tried very hard to not, we didn't pursue anyone. We didn't wine them and dine them and say, come with us. We just, as we gave what happened, people started saying, yeah, me too. And it was interesting because as that happened, people started saying, I was on my way out. My wife hasn't been there in a while and doesn't want to be there at this church. So people were not happy. They were ready to leave, and it was crazy because, one by one, each of these families that were in the same spot we were in, that they were mentally not there. They weren't getting anything out of it. They weren't feeling the push to help in ministry or to seek out ways to provide it, because anyone who's been through that knows that when you're up against a lot in ministry, it's hard. You keep getting knocked back down and you start to give up. And that's where a lot of us were. We were ready to give up. We were just kind of going in routine and not getting anything out of it. And we were in ministry, paid. So everybody felt that way. So we had, shortly after all this, at this point, so Bob is out of his job. He's been out for, let's say, a month. And we now have 30 people that are with us, committed, wanting to be a part of the groundwork to start this new church. And so we decided to start meeting regularly. We started meeting on Sunday nights. And we just talked about what we all thought the church would be, what we want it to be called, how it would be coming together. And we got excited. We got excited that it was, 30 people's a lot. That's like that's a few months after starting a church. So then, let's see what else. So we're meeting regularly, and we have some issues with, people from the church. Obviously, they're not happy with us. So Bob's been through meetings at this point, people just telling him he was wrong. And he stood on his own, him and Matt stood secure and said, this is what we are called to do. Bob's confirmed that, through elders. Biblically, that's what it says, to come to your elders and present your problems and have them pray and confirm that. And that's what happened. And it was some hard moments there. Until then, I had been working at my job full time, and I decided, it's time for me to tell my director, so let's say like 2.5 weeks after it happened. So I go into work, and I know all day I'm going to tell her, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? So I decided at the end of the day, I'm going to go in and tell her, and that way if I'm upset or if I cry, at least I can run out. That was my plan. So I go in and I say, Judy, I have to let you know my husband was let go of his job. She knows he's in ministry. She's a Christian. She's a believer, a serious believer. And she says, oh my, what happened? So I tell her a little bit. I don't go a lot of the details because I don't want her to judge him. I feel like everybody is, so I don't want one more person to give him that terrible view. So I start telling her, and she says, oh no, that means you're going to leave. I know pastors leave. And I said, no, we love this town. We want to build into this town. We're here. And I said, but, we're going to start our own church. That's our plan. And I said, he wants to be a church planner. And so we continue our conversation. She's asking questions. And then she says, I can't stop thinking about you mentioning church planner. That keeps coming to my head. I said, okay. And she said, my church is looking for a pastor to help plant a branch of our church. And I'm like, wow, okay. And she says the name of the church, and I'm like, oh, never mind. Because I know that church, and it's a big church, and they're successful, and they have their ducks in a row, and they're doing well. And I think they won't want us. They won't want Bob. Bob's a troublemaker. And I just had this impression, I had this thought in my mind, and I thought I was right, that just like any other company, career field, you have to have it right to get higher up, to move up. And I thought, well, thanks, but no thanks. It's not going to work. So I said, well, that's nice. I didn't tell her no thank you. I just said, that's nice of you to think of me that way. So I managed to get out of the office, and I didn't cry. I was so happy. So I leave, and I meet Bob, and I tell him that I told her. And even though I'm hesitant, I tell him, I say, she mentioned this church and that they're looking for a pastor. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. And he's like, wow, really? So he's persistent. So he calls like in the car while we're in the car together, that moment. And the whole time he's on the phone, I'm thinking, oh, poor Bob. Gotta love him. I love him. And But it was like cute. It was like, oh, how sweet. You think this is going to work. They're not going to want anything to do with us. So he calls, gets the secretary, leaves a message. And I'm like, well, I'm almost in my head preparing how to handle it when he realizes they're not calling back, you know, and thinking, how are we going to push through that? So we move on, and I think it was like 2 days later, we got a phone call, and the secretary says, the head pastor wants to meet with you tomorrow. I'm like, wow, that's exciting. I can't believe they called, let alone he wants to meet with Bob immediately. Because that's unusual. Pastors and ministry, when you want to change, it kind of goes slow. So they meet, and I remember I'm at work, and I'm just like trying to keep myself busy. And I know he's going to call. I know what time he's meeting. I know, generally there'll be an hour or so. So I'm like planning everything around that. And I run to the bathroom, I get the phone, I call him, and I'm like, I can't talk very loud, but please tell me, is it good? What's up? And he says, the information that will, that rocked my world, I guess you would say, right then, and changed everything. He says, they're planning a church, they're looking at our town. The only thing that's kept them from planting is they don't have their head pastor. And I'm just in shock. I was like speechless. I was like, what? That's crazy. How does that happen? And I think, are they really thinking it could be Bob? Like, they don't know how much we've messed up. They don't know how we don't have our ducks in a row. It's crazy. So I'm like still thinking, well, that's really cool, but I don't know if that would work. This church is big and they have it all together. So he's like, yeah, they've just been waiting. They're actually like in frustration right now because they don't have the leader. And they've been waiting for him. That's the only thing they don't have. They even have like funding together. They have their money together. They're looking at buildings. They're, everything. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Could this be us? Could this be what we are doing? So we keep it between us. We don't tell anyone for a little while. And he has a few meetings. And I remember then that he met with two of the pastors, and he came home and he was like, it was awesome. And he starts telling me how they've been waiting and they're just hurting, that they're looking for this person, they can't find them. And Bob says, well, we are meeting regularly with 30 people, and we've been praying for our church. I mean, if you're a ministry or if you've ever been involved in a church, you understand how crazy that is. That here Bob left his job knowing that he could be fired. Didn't think he would be, but he was. Lost everything. But his family threw a lot. His friends threw a lot. And at that very same time that we were letting go and starting something new, praying for this church, here this other church is praying basically for us to come around. That's crazy. And they're in shock. They're in shock that we're praying for this church. We don't know what it is, but we're just believing and hoping and trusting that we're on the right path. And so we collided together. We started meeting with them regularly, and it became a job interview then. They were interviewing Bob. They were pulling all his pieces of our life together and asking God for the green light, and we did it over and over and over and over, several meetings, and just me waiting and struggling to get through the day waiting. And so now we're here. We are, let's see, Bob has been hired. It's been almost a month. I think next week it'll be a month. And he's still in the beginning process of being trained, I guess you would say. He's been in ministry for 8 years, but we've never been a part of a church like this. This is a whole nother animal. We've never been involved with something so structured, organized, and effective. They're accomplishing great things. They have several branches here as well as internationally. And, they're not just flash in the pan, all about getting their name out there. They're giving and bringing the lost to Christ, leading others to finding hope and the love of Christ. And that is so cool to see. So that's basically my story right now. I hesitate to tell people at times because I just think, I know it's not even a matter of are they going to judge me? It's how are they going to judge me? How are they going to criticize me? How are they going to look at everything and say, well, you brought this upon yourself. You're wrong. We still get a lot of that, and it hurts really bad, especially when it's people you think you know and you think, if you love me, then you will come to me and talk to me. You will not just believe gossip. And we are responsible for those bad mistakes as well. But man, we've learned our lesson to not take an issue for the first opinion, the first story, the first side, because, just people so angry and they don't even know. They've heard secondhand knowledge, and we keep saying the same thing over and over again, that we're not stealing people. This shouldn't be about stealing people or having numbers. If that's what you're worried about, then I guess that's what you're focusing your ministry on, is a number. But we're focusing on God's leading of finding a new way to deal with a problem that hasn't been fixed. We have so many young people in this town that don't have any hope. We've seen it. We've had crazy things, experiences where we've seen people seeking it, and we don't have any place to turn and tell them to go because we want it to be genuine and real and effective. So we are working with this church, and we are in the beginning processes. We're looking for a building. We still haven't confirmed a building yet, but we're looking at some great options. And Bob and I are being fed spiritually, and we're building relationships that we didn't have those types of relationships before. So we're really excited. So that was a lot. But anyway, I'm doing this video to kind of keep track of how things are going. I first started blogging and writing, and I realized I'm not much of a writer. I write because I have to for school, but I don't enjoy it. I don't mind speaking, and I'll get used to this. But more than anything, this is about tracking the journey, tracking the experience that we're going through so that we have it to say, wow, I forgot about that. Look back on it and say, yeah, I remember that was crazy. Just to see, because we know that crazy things are coming. We know we've seen little bits and pieces of God confirming it. And not crazy like, oh, we're going to take over the world, but more we're going to change a little part of our world. We're going to see people who didn't have an opportunity or weren't interested in coming to church, and they're going to try something different, and it's going to lead them to Christ and to hope that they didn't have. So feel free to ask questions. I've already had millions of questions, so I guess they can handle it. And if you've been watching and you know what this is like, please let me know, because I need all the support I can get. It's every day something new. Right now we're dealing with strep throat and illness through my family for the past month, and I don't want to say that's the enemy for sure, who knows, but it's really hard. So just crazy things like that. Relationships changed, hurting, But anyway, so please join me in this, and I will continue to update. Thanks.